Death, the final frontier, and some people manage to crash into it like a flaming meteor of bad luck, bad choices, or just cosmic irony. Today, we're diving headfirst into the 5 most brutal human deaths ever recorded. And don't worry, we'll hold your hand through the gore, with gloves on. Buckle up, it's going to be terminally entertaining. We're heading to the Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on Earth, where, ironically, one unlucky soul managed to pull off the impossible: death by drowning. Yeah, in the desert. If that doesn't scream zero chill, I don't know what does. So, let's rewind about 5,500 years. It's the Neolithic era. You're a coastal guy living in what's now northern Chile, a place so dry it makes Death Valley look like a kiddie pool. But back then, much like now, the Atacama was brutal, blazing hot by day, freezing cold by night, and completely uninterested in your survival. Still, people made it work, especially near the coast, where seafood was plentiful and the ocean offered both dinner and danger. Enter our unfortunate protagonist, a man around 35 to 45 years old, buried in a round stone tomb on a bed of seashells. Sounds kinda peaceful, right? Maybe even elegant. But don't be fooled, this wasn't a spa burial. Scientists were puzzled. The guy had no obvious injuries, no spear wounds, no bear maulings, no Neolithic slips and falls. He just dropped dead, or so it seemed. Then came the microscopic bombshell: diatoms. What the heck are diatoms? Tiny algae that live in water. Not the seaweed on your leg kind. These are invisible to the eye, floaty ocean dwellers. And somehow, they were inside his bones, which, for the record, is not where diatoms belong. The only way they end up in your skeleton is if you inhale water so violently that your lungs burst. Water floods your bloodstream, and those tiny algae hitch a ride all the way into your marrow. Yeah, it's as bad as it sounds. In short, homeboy drowned. In one of the driest places on Earth. While living near the coast, sure, but still, the irony is thick. Now, this guy wasn't exactly thriving before the ocean claimed him. His skeleton showed advanced arthritis. His legs were worn down, probably from years of squatting to gather shells. His arms and shoulders were overdeveloped in the worst way. Clearly, the result of non-stop rowing, swimming, and chucking harpoons at fish. Basically, he was a prehistoric gym rat who never skipped leg day. But it came at a price. To make matters worse, he was also severely iron deficient. And why? Tapeworms? Giant, gnarly parasites likely picked up from eating fish that were about as cooked as your average sushi roll. So, let's tally this up. Back pain, busted knees, worm-infested guts, and a final breath that involved inhaling the Pacific. Oof, but wait, it gets weirder. He wasn't alone. Buried beside him were 3 others, another adult male, a woman, and an infant. All 4 dated to the exact same time. So, naturally, people started thinking disaster scenario. Earthquake plus tsunami equals prehistoric wipeout. Makes sense, right? Well, not quite. The other 3 skeletons? No diatoms, not even a trace, which means they did not drown. So much for the tsunami theory. The current thinking is this: our guy drowned, maybe while diving for shellfish. The others? They died around the same time, maybe even the same day, but from something else entirely. Dehydration, exposure, illness, or maybe just life being the worst. So, to wrap it up, one overworked fisherman with a tapeworm and crumbling joints drowns in the ocean, in the middle of the driest desert on Earth, while 3 companions drop dead nearby from unrelated causes. It's basically a 5,000-year-old group project from hell, and one mystery no one's figured out yet. And next time you're at the beach thinking, I could totally live here. Remember, this guy probably thought the same thing, until the ocean quite literally dragged him under. Alright, buckle up, because we're diving into history's first confirmed shark attack. Not exactly the firsts you'd want your name attached to, but here we are, 3,400 years later, still talking about one unlucky dude named Tsukumo 24. Sounds like a futuristic robot, right? Nope, just the name archaeologists gave to an ancient hunter-gatherer from Japan who had a very, very bad day. So, what happened? Back in 2021, researchers uncovered a human skeleton near the Sato Inland Sea in Japan. And let's just say it wasn't in the best shape. This guy was absolutely shredded. Like, not Jim Gaines shredded, but chewed up like leftover jerky shredded. We're talking 790 injuries all over his body. Arms, chest, abdomen, hands, basically a full-body horror show. At first, scientists were baffled. The cuts went so deep they gouged into bone, more like what you'd expect from metal weapons than anything natural. But here's the plot twist. Tsukumo 24 lived in the Jomon era, a time when metal weapons didn't even exist in Japan. So, unless someone invented time travel to bring a samurai sword back in time just to go full Mortal Kombat on this guy, something didn't add up. Then came the aha moment. Upon closer inspection, the wounds were V-shaped, eerily similar to injuries caused by modern-day shark bites. Combine that with the fact that Japan is literally an island chain, and the conclusion was pretty clear. This man got tag-teamed by a very hungry tiger shark or great white. And it wasn't a quick snack either. It was a full-course tragedy. How bad was it? Every rib, cracked or torn, chest and guts, eviscerated. Dismembered feet and a missing hand? Yep, gone. What's worse, these weren't post-mortem injuries. He was alive when it happened, and he likely fought back, losing limbs in the process. That alone ruled out scavenging. It was a full-blown ambush, not some shark snacking on leftovers. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Tsukumo 24 wasn't found floating at sea or washed up somewhere. He was actually discovered in a legit burial site. That means someone had the decency and bravery to recover his mutilated body and give him a proper send-off. So, what's the theory? Researchers believe Tsukumo 24 wasn't solo. He was probably out on a fishing trip with others. Jomon people were pro-level fishers after all. The theory goes that he might have jumped in the water to haul in a catch or do some spearfishing, not realizing that blood in the water was ringing the dinner bell for a nearby shark. Next thing you know, chomp chomp, full aquatic horror show. His buddies likely saw it happen and pulled him out, but by then it was game over. Now, before you cancel your Japan trip and vow to never touch salt water again, relax. Yes, sharks still exist in Japanese waters, but back in the Jomon era, they were way more common. Fossil records show a ton of shark teeth from that time, and even ancient artwork features them, especially tiger sharks and hammerheads. So yeah, shark attacks were basically the medieval version of texting while walking into traffic. In the end, Tsukumo 24 didn't survive, but he did make history as the unfortunate owner of the world's first confirmed shark attack. Not the legacy anyone dreams of, but hey, at least he didn't get taken out by something boring like food poisoning. Back in the Neolithic era, Earth wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Between hunting your dinner, avoiding becoming someone else's dinner, and surviving in a world with no Wi-Fi, things were rough. But as if nature's challenges weren't enough, humans decided to crank the pain up a notch with DIY brain surgery. Yep, we're talking about one of the oldest surgical practices ever discovered, trepanation, or, as I like to call it, extreme hole punching for humans. Let's zoom in on a site in France dating back to around 6500 BC, where archaeologists uncovered something that might look like a prehistoric crime scene. Dozens of skulls, 38 to be exact, with neat circular holes bored right through the bone. But don't cue the law and order sound just yet. These weren't casualties of some ancient battle royale or mass murder. What we're looking at here is early medical intervention. Sort of. These holes weren't caused by violence, at least not the usual kind. Instead, they were the result of a deliberate surgical procedure called trepanation. It's considered one of the first widespread forms of surgery performed by Homo sapiens. And just to be clear, no scalpels, no antiseptics, and absolutely no anesthesia. Just stone tools, shaky hands, and a whole lot of pain tolerance. Trepanation involved scraping or drilling a hole into the human skull, presumably while the patient was still very much alive. And although the idea of someone coming at your head with a sharpened flint tool sounds like a horror movie setup, the practice was surprisingly common. Across multiple archaeological sites, including the one in France, trepanation appears to have been all the rage. In fact, some studies suggest up to 10% of Neolithic people underwent the procedure. At the French site, a staggering 33%. That's 1 in 3 people walking around with a literal hole in their head. Now, you might be thinking, if it was so popular, maybe it worked. Well, not really. Evidence shows that less than 40% of those trepanned skulls had signs of healing, meaning over 60% of patients likely didn't make it. The top contenders for cause of death, infection, massive blood loss, or the surgeon just poking a little too deep into the old brain matter. And for those who did survive, recovery took months, with the risk of lifelong pain, neurological issues, or just being stuck with a permanent headache bigger than the one they were probably trying to cure. So why on earth did anyone agree to this? The reasons for trepanation were as diverse as they were speculative. Some think it was done to release evil spirits, ancient brain exorcism, anyone? While others suggest it was used to treat head injuries. Fairly common in a time when clubs and rocks were the primary dispute resolution tools. It may have also been used to ease epilepsy, migraines, or even psychological conditions. Basically, if your head hurt, someone's solution was to drill a hole in it and hope for the best. Honestly, if you were alive back then, the smartest move was probably to keep your headaches to yourself. Interestingly, people of all ages were trepanned. Kids, adults, the elderly, no one was safe. And while the tools were crude, think sharpened flint, bone scrapers, or even seashells, the results were sometimes surprisingly precise. It wasn't always a hack job. Some of these ancient surgeons knew what they were doing. Sort of. Even more surprising, trepanation never truly disappeared. While the modern version is vastly more refined and done only in specific medical cases, like relieving brain pressure, it's still performed today, only now with sterile equipment and an actual anesthesiologist instead of, say, a guy with a rock and good intentions. So the next time you think you're having a rough day, just remember, at least no one's trying to fix your headache by cracking open your skull with a seashell. Progress, baby. Picture this. It's 31,000 years ago. There are no hospitals, no Tylenol, no doctors, just sticks, stones, and a whole lot of survival instincts. You stub your toe and it's game over. But against all odds, someone in ancient Borneo pulled off a medical miracle that's still leaving scientists shook, the oldest known human amputation. Yep, before there were Netflix doctors, there were cave surgeons with sharp rocks. Until recently, the record for earliest known amputee went to a Neolithic farmer from Europe who had a leg chopped off about 7,000 years ago. Impressive, but not ancient enough. Enter 2020. While most of us were discovering banana bread and emotional breakdowns, a team of scientists stumbled across something way cooler, buried in the depths of a cave in Indonesia called Liang Tebo. Inside that cave, a skeleton, but not just any skeleton. This one was missing a left foot and part of its leg. Naturally, people assumed it had been lost in a tragic, oops, I fell off a cliff kind of accident. But then the scientists took a closer look and noticed something weird. The bone showed signs of careful cutting and, wait for it, healing. Yeah, not only had this person survived having a leg removed, but the stump had actually healed nicely. We're talking clean cuts, no signs of infection, and evidence of continued growth afterward. Let's be clear here. Whoever performed this Stone Age surgery was basically a prehistoric rock star. No scalpels, no anesthesia, just sharpened rocks and sheer determination. Somehow, they managed to slice through skin, veins, nerves, arteries, without killing the patient or causing a nasty infection. In fact, modern studies say that even today, about 40% of major amputations can get infected. So yeah, score 1 for Caveman Medicine. The person who got the chop, they were likely a child at the time, based on the size of the remaining leg, but grew up into a young adult and lived for years after the operation. possibly even a decade. They eventually died in their 20s from something totally unrelated. Aliens? Saber-toothed tigers? Who knows? But their leg clearly wasn't the thing that took them out. So, what happened to the leg in the first place? Well, the cave sits in a ridiculously rugged area. Picture boulders, cliffs, and all the ankle-breaking terrain you can imagine. Maybe our ancient friend tripped, fell, and their leg got absolutely wrecked by a boulder. Or maybe a rock slide caught them at the wrong time. Whatever it was, it must have been bad enough for someone to say, "Yup, that leg's gotta go." And here's the wildest part. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Okay, maybe not in the modern influencer lifestyle kind of way, but they lived. In a world where literally everything wanted to eat or maim you, they made it. They even probably had a squad who helped them out, carried them around, shared food, and kept them alive. It's one of the earliest examples of human empathy and teamwork, because let's face it, hopping through mountains on one leg isn't exactly a solo sport. So next time you complain about slow Wi-Fi or losing a snap streak, just remember, 31,000 years ago, someone had their leg hacked off with a rock, didn't die, and still managed to be part of a prehistoric friend group. Now, that's hardcore. Let's take a moment to appreciate modern comforts like Tylenol, indoor heating, and not getting dumped into a swamp after death. Because today's tale, it's a certified Iron Age horror show. Enter Mora, or, as she's sometimes called, the girl of Uchter Moor, a young woman whose life was basically the ancient version of a non-stop bad day. So, who was she? Mora was a bog body. Yep, you heard right. A bog body, which is basically a human preserved in a peat bog, a kind of super soggy plant matter swamp that's great for naturally mummifying people and not so great for, living. Think of it as history's least relaxing spa treatment. Her remains were discovered in Germany back in the year 2000, and at first people thought she might be a recent missing person, maybe a partygoer who vanished after a night out. But nope, turns out she was over 1,000 years old, hailing from the Iron Age, and was somewhere between 17 and 19 when she died. So, basically still a teen, except her life? Way, way more brutal than your average high school drama. First off, her skeleton read like a laundry list of pain. Mora's body showed signs of intense physical labor, probably hauling heavy stuff like water jugs through marshy terrain. Basically, CrossFit, but involuntary and way less Instagrammable. But wait, it gets worse. Her skull had 2 massive fractures that had healed, which means she survived a major head injury. Not just a bump, these were serious bone-cracking impacts, likely caused by blunt force trauma. Could have been an attack from outsiders, could have been someone from her own village. Either way, the girl took a hit and lived to tell the tale, though probably with constant headaches and possible neurological symptoms. And as if that weren't enough, Mora also had a benign tumor chilling at the base of her skull. This unwelcome passenger probably messed with her nerves, gave her even more headaches, and caused her spine to curve. Hello, chronic back pain. Her legs? Inflamed to the point that it actually changed the shape of her bones. And all this while still a teenager. Oh, and did we mention she was also malnourished? Her bones showed signs of childhood starvation and illness, likely from cold winters and not enough to eat. Basically, Mora's body was constantly fighting itself and the environment. Every single day must have felt like level 100 in survival mode. Now, as for how she died, there's no evidence she was murdered, which is weirdly the good news here. Most bog bodies show signs of violence or ritual killing, but in Mora's case, it's believed she may have died in a freak accident. That said, there's one odd detail that raises eyebrows. She was found completely naked, with no personal items, no jewelry, nothing, which suggests someone moved or altered her body before dumping her into the bog. Why? We don't know. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was secrecy, or maybe it was just how her community handled death. Either way, it's suspicious. And just when you think her saga couldn't get more depressing, her discovery was a mess. Literally. She wasn't gently unearthed by archaeologists, but accidentally scooped up and shredded by a machine. Her remains had to be pieced together like a 1,000-year-old jigsaw puzzle. Even in death, Mora couldn't catch a break. So, yeah, next time you complain about a tough day, just remember Mora. Iron Age teenager, survivor of blunt trauma, tumors, malnutrition, and finally, a brutal post-mortem recovery. Life back then, no Wi-Fi, no snacks, just pain.